I will lift my voice in quiet surrender, offering the first breath of this journey to the one whose name is higher than every name. In the stillness before dawn, I feel the echo of ancient praise stirring in my soul. Like the psalmist who declared that his mouth would ever resound with thanksgiving, so mine rises now, unbidden and true, in that gentle promise. I find the invitation to walk with the afflicted, to let their sorrows become mine, and to taste the sweetness of hope as water to a parched throat. I remember the words that flow like a river through our hearts, teaching us that when we seek, we discover the living presence of the Almighty. There came a season in my life when fear was a constant companion, its shadow stretched before me in every breath. Yet in my trembling I heard a whisper, "Look to me." And as I dared to lift my gaze, I saw a radiant dawn breaking within. Fear surrendered to faith, darkness giving way to glory. Like that poor soul whose cry reached heaven's ear and found rescue in the encampment of an unseen host. I learned that divine armies stand guard around those who tremble at love's command. In the quiet hours I tasted and saw that goodness is not a distant star, but a living spring. Blessed are those who dwell in its shelter, whose hearts lack no blessing. The fierce beast may prowl the wilderness of the heart, and hunger may gnaw at fate's edges. But the one who formed every sparrow's wing provides for those who dare to trust. In my wanderings I have stumbled among briars of doubt, yet I have glimpsed a juniper growing where thorns once lay waste, a testament that mercy transforms desert soils into fields of rejoicing. Come, children of promise, listen, for life unfolds in the choices of the tongue, in the paths we pursue. When we guard our lips from deceit and turn from evil's lure, we discover hidden treasures, joy that springs from peace pursued. I have known restless nights, when unanswered prayers felt like echoes chasing their own silence. Yet I found in persistence the revelation that prayer is not bargaining but communion. The one who bends to hear every whisper leans close to the brokenhearted, lifting the crushed and healing the wounded spirit. Through seasons of trial, I have counted many troubles. Yet I have also known the unshakable truth that bones once broken become instruments of resilience. There is a promise woven into the fabric of suffering. It refines rather than destroys, for the Lord delivers his own from every snare. Those who oppose his chosen meet their end in folly, but the righteous rise on wings of deliverance, marked not by scars of shame, but by testimonies of grace. In a far-off moment of desperation, I stood at the edge of my own capacity, empty-handed yet yearning for satisfaction. Then the invitation came, "Come to the waters, you who thirst. Come, eat without money. Taste the riches of divine provision." It was there, beside that flowing well, that I learned the fullness of an everlasting covenant, like the promise whispered to David and carried on the breath of prophets yet unborn. From my lips rose a song of nations summoned, strangers drawn by a love that knows no boundary, a love that crowns the humble with splendor. Seek while the door stands open. Call when the bell still echoes, for mercy flows freely to all who turn their hearts. I have seen the wayward spirit restored when kindness found home in repentance. I watched pride bow before the unmerited grace that pardons without price. My thoughts were once tangled in the brambles of my own making, but I discovered that the Lord's wisdom is higher than the loftiest mountain, his understanding surpassing the depths of every valley. As rain nourishes seed hidden in the earth, so his word accomplishes in me what my will could never achieve, bringing forth harvests of peace and joy. I walked then into a garden of assurance, where the hills sang and trees clapped like hands in unending praise. There I recognized that transformation is the work of heaven, a sign that endures when time itself grows faint. In that sacred place, my heart was anchored to a purpose beyond my sight, and I learned that every step of trust invites creation itself to bear witness. And so I came to ponder the secrets of the kingdom, hidden beneath ordinary acts of love. When I gave in secrecy, my gift became a seed sown in eternal soil. When I knelt in solitude to speak my need, the unseen Father leaned in to hear. He knows before I speak. He cares before I feel. In that intimacy, I found the pattern of prayer, not the empty babble of vain repetition, but the breath of communion that shapes the soul. He called me to pray for daily bread, to forgive as I have been forgiven, to stand firm against the tempter's snare. In the discipline of fasting, I discovered a deeper hunger, the yearning for his presence more than for any pleasure. When I washed my face and anointed my head, I remember that authenticity pleases God more than any display of piety. In laying up treasures beyond time, I felt my heart unbound from the chains of wealth, drawn instead to the riches of heaven where moth cannot devour nor rust corrupt. The lamp of the body, the eye, must be clear lest light become shadow. I have faced a choice between serving gods of comfort and clinging to the true source of all grace. Knowing this, I laid aside anxiety over bread and raiment, watching the birds whose song sustains a morning, and the lilies clothed more splendidly than Solomon in all his glory. If I, a fragile dust, am cared for so tenderly, how much more shall I be clothed in dignity, upheld by a Father whose love knows no end? Yet there came tremors in my life, earthquakes that shook the foundations of hope, and I remember that God is our refuge, our strength in every storm. When the rivers roared and mountains quaked beneath the weight of chaos, the city of the soul rejoiced in the steady stream flowing from the throne of mercy. At break of day, he lifted the din of nations and silenced the roar of war. He bade the storm be still, and his voice became a banner of peace over trembling hearts. In the hush that followed, I heard him whisper the invitation to behold his works, to wander beyond the ruins and see how beauty is born from ashes. I saw the nations drawn by a kingdom not built by human hands, a fortress not made of stone, but of living stones, those who trust, those who hope, those who love. In that vision, I found my purpose, my song, my reason to stand firm even when the ground beneath me trembled. Then, in a moment of timeless grace, I heard the call not to be troubled but to believe. Believe in the one who prepares rooms beyond sight, who promises to return and gather his own into a place where sorrow cannot tread. He spoke of paths I could not yet see, of a way that transcended every question, of words not born in my mind but of the Father's heart. To Thomas, who wondered, he revealed that he is the way, the truth, the life. No one journeys to the source apart from his guiding footsteps. And Philip, longing to see the hidden face, learned that to know him is to know the one who sent him, for Son and Father are one in purpose and being. In those words, I sense a unity woven through the cosmos, a tapestry of grace binding heaven and earth, inviting every heart to believe on evidence of works and to expect greater things than any dream dare to hold. As I listened, the promise expanded. Greater works, answered prayers in his name, a testimony that would glorify Father and Son in one unbroken chorus of praise. To love him is to keep his commands. To dwell in his presence is to receive an advocate, a spirit of truth who comes to abide within, unseen by the world, but known intimately by every heart that welcomes him. I have tasted that presence in moments of brokenness, when my prayers felt unworthy, yet were carried on wings of intercession higher than my sin. I have felt the Spirit's gentle corrections, guiding me from errant thoughts to paths of righteousness. I have learned that I am never orphaned, for he comes to me through silence and song, preparing me for a life that dances between earth and heaven. In the days ahead, I will speak of trials and triumphs, of questions wrestled in midnight tears, and answers found in morning rays. I will share journeys through valleys dim and mountaintops gleaming with revelation. Each fragment of this odyssey will carry forward the flame of hope, bridging the darkness with light and inviting every listener to step into the unfolding story of grace. And as I draw this first breath to a close, I turn my eyes to the road before me, where verses yet unspoken await their hour. The narrative stretches onward, weaving together prayer and promise, lament and rejoicing, until every page reflects the melody of redemption. So let us continue, hand in hand, into the tapestry of love that stretches beyond these words, toward a destiny written by the one whose story is our own. With steady steps I follow the path that rises beyond the horizon of fear, carrying the lamp of faith into valleys where doubt still lingers. I recall how, amid the clamor of life's demands, the teacher bid us lift our eyes above tomorrow's worries, to learn from birds whose carefree song heralds each sunrise. In their freedom, I found release from anxious toil, and in the petals of wildflowers, I discovered a portrait divine care more splendid than any royal cloak. It was there, beside the bending stalks of grass, that I understood the truth of seeking first the reign of heaven, and watching every need be met in due time. As I journeyed on, I heard the gentle whisper inviting me to a higher plane, where mercy becomes a river that never runs dry. In that revelation, I saw the face of the forgiving Father, whose heart pulses with compassion for the wayward and the weary. I remember the moment when remorse weighed heavily upon me, and like the prodigal who rose from dust to feast at home, I felt the embrace of grace wash away my shame. The older son's hardened pride faded before the jubilation of reunion, teaching me that celebration awaits every return, and the house of heaven echoes with shouts of mercy rather than murmurs of judgment. Through winding trails of Scripture I walked, guided by the one who spoke in parables of seeds sown on varied soils. In my own heart, I identified stones of skepticism, thorns of distraction, and fertile fields ready to yield abundance. I learned to cultivate listening ears, to receive each word of truth as a kernel of life planted deep within my spirit. And when storms of affliction swept the plain, I held fast to the promise that every root established in love stands firm against wind and rain. There came a time when conflict rose between brothers over inheritance, mirroring struggles in my own soul between selfish ambition and sacrificial love. Yet I heard words that turned my wrath to wonder. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called children of God. In those syllables, I found the courage to lay down my cause, to pursue reconciliation even when pride whispered otherwise. In the act of seeking peace, I tasted the fruit of unity, sweeter than any victory won by force. In the hush that followed, the image of a lamp set on a stand illuminated the darkness of hidden motives. I saw how hypocrisy dims the glow of faith, while authenticity brightens every corner of our lives. So I resolved to let my light shine, not for applause, but to guide wandering souls to the heart of love. When criticism came as a wave of cold water, I remembered that clear vision springs from clean hands and a pure heart, and I returned kindness for scorn, knowing that love covers a multitude of faults. I walked into a wilderness of testing, where voices urged me to turn stones into bread, to seize power without cost. Yet I held fast to the one who had fed me with words of life, refusing every seduction of empty gain. In that struggle, I discovered an inner strength born not of will alone, but communion with the Word made flesh. Each temptation fell before the shield of truth, reminding me that real sustenance flows from obedience to a higher call. Later, beside a tranquil sea, I witnessed a storm arise at evening, tossing even seasoned hearts into terror. Yet at the crescendo of their fear, they heard a voice that stilled the wind. Peace, be still. In that utterance, I sensed a depth of authority vested in his words, a power that reaches beyond disruption to the very soul's unrest. And when I walked upon the restless waves by fate's invitation, I felt the assurance that even the most turbulent doubts can be conquered by the simple command, come. With each mile I traveled, the panorama of grace unfolded before me, revealing a kingdom defined not by might but by mercy, not by wealth but by wonder. I saw the hungry satisfied, the lame leaping in joy, the blind beholding sunrise with new eyes. In those signs I glimpsed the heart of heaven, a home where every broken part is made whole and every lament turns to song. I learned that healing is not merely the absence of pain, but the overflow of compassion that restores the image of God in every soul. In the marketplace of life, I watched as a teacher spun tales of hidden treasure, of a pearl of great price for which one would gladly sell all else. I sensed the urgency beneath every metaphor, that identity and purpose are found not in possessions, but in the pursuit of eternity. At the crossroad between temporal comforts and timeless values, I chose the path of giving all for the greater gain, trusting that what we relinquish for the kingdom's sake is returned with compound interest of blessing. Now, as the sun dips toward the next chapter of this odyssey, I feel the stirring of fresh themes yet to be unveiled. The cost of discipleship, the mystery of suffering embraced in love, the promise of resurrection that breaks the final bond of death. Each thread weaves seamlessly into the tapestry, begun in first light, carried forth by the one who proclaimed that gates of hell shall not prevail against the truth he plants within us. So let us step together into the unfolding dawn, hearts attuned to the gentle pulse of heaven's heartbeat. Let us press deeper into the secret place where gladness and tears merge in holy harmony. And let us prepare to hear the next refrain of this eternal song, for beyond the bend awaits another glimpse of glory, another invitation to taste, to see, and to live in the wonder of the kingdom without end. As the horizon of this journey unfurls before us, we come now to waters stirred by both marvel and mystery, where the teacher's words guide our steps like lanterns in the night. In seasons past I had tasted mercy's sweetness, but here I discover its depth. That love bears each burden, welcoming every sorrow into the embrace of healing hands. I remember standing at the edge of a crowd, hearts heavy with need, when he spoke not to silence the cries, but to multiply compassion, gathering 5 loaves and 2 fish, and transforming scarcity into abundance until baskets overflowed with grace. In that moment I saw how every gift, surrendered to divine purpose, yields more than the sum of its parts. Moving on, I found myself in the company of those called to follow, ordinary souls whose lives became extraordinary through obedience to a single invitation. Come, follow me. Peter left his nets. Matthew rose from his tax table. Blind Bartimaeus exchanged his cloak for sight. Their stories wove into mine, reminding me that calling often means leaving what is familiar and stepping into a destiny traced in heaven's ledger. Along dusty roads we shared no more than faith and willingness, yet witnessed signs that declared the kingdom's arrival. Demons fleeing at a word, cripples dancing at his touch, lepers cleansed by a glance. One dawn, as dew still glisten on olive leaves, I heard him speak a prayer as a foundation stone beneath our lives, likening it to a house built on rock that stands firm amid storm's assault. In that teaching I perceived the peril of shallow roots. Faith anchored to circumstance rather than to steadfast love. So I resolved to build on the rock himself, cultivating a life of dependence rather than self-reliance, so that when winds roared and floods rose, my heart would dwell in unshakable peace. Yet peace did not mean exemption from trial. In Gethsemane's darkness, I witnessed agony deeper than any desert night, as the son wrestled with sorrow's cup. His sweat fell like blood upon the ground, and I realized that obedience sometimes demands surrender to suffering. In those hours I learned that prayer is both petition and yielding, that the mightiest cry can be not my will but yours. When he rose again, triumphant over every power, I grasped that resurrection life flows from the well of brokenness, grace made perfect in our weakness. From that garden to the upper room, we traced a path of intimacy, where a towel became a towel of service, and a meal became a sacrament of remembrance. He knelt before us not as a king demanding homage, but as a servant washing dusty feet, teaching that greatness in his kingdom is measured by humility and love poured out. In that act, I saw the blueprint for community, not gatherings of self-seeking souls, but assemblies of hearts laid bare before one another, cleansed by grace and bound by mutual care. On that night, too, he spoke of a comforter, a spirit of truth to come, a presence that would abide within, teaching, guiding, consoling. I longed then as now for that deeper fellowship, when questions find their answers in whisperings of peace and paraclete breath stirs faith to life. Through trials and triumphs alike, that spirit remains a thread weaving our stories into a single tapestry, knitting together fragments of longing into a garment fit for glory. As we press onward, we approach the shadow of the cross and the dawn of resurrection, themes that will shape every step yet to unfold. The narrative will carry us through betrayal's sting in Pilate's court, up Golgotha's slope, and beyond the sealed tomb into the radiance of eternal hope. Each scene will reveal that love poured out is never wasted, that death's darkest hour becomes a dawn of new creation. So let us continue, hearts open to the whisper of heaven, eyes fixed on the path of sacrifice and service, ears attuned to the shepherd's call. The road ahead is steep and strewn with both sorrow and triumph. May our faith be the lamp that lights the way, our hope the staff that steadies our steps, and our love the song that rises even in the valley. For beyond every trial awaits the promise of glory, and beyond every shadow the presence of the one whose story we now inhabit. The coming hours enveloped us in a hush that felt heavier than any storm wind, as if creation itself held its breath before the greatest turning of the ages. In the garden's cool shadows, I watched the teacher's face drain of every color but resolve, his prayer rising like incense to the Father, not for relief from sorrow alone, but for alignment with a higher purpose that would weave redemption to the world's darkest hour. When the soldiers came, lanterns bobbing in the olive grove, sleep fled from our eyes and betrayal's blade cut deepest at the heart. A kiss, not affection, but a treachery, sealed his fate, and in that single act I realized how love could be both lamp and lure, drawing out every secret of the soul. Dragged before authorities cloaked in arrogance and fear, he stood silent while lies tumbled like stones against his name. In Pilate's hall I saw power trembling at truth's quiet courage, and I felt my own soul tremble between cowardice and confession. When I denied him 3 times before the cock's crow, my tears became the mirror in which I viewed my weakness. And yet through that very failure, I glimpsed the depth of his mercy, mercy that would reach across every posture of fear to reclaim the broken. Outside those walls, the crowd shouts rang with fury and ignorance, demanding a verdict that would seem final yet could not contain the force of love incarnate. On the way to Golgotha, I carried the weight of my own shame alongside the rough beams that bore his frame. Each stumble his foot echoed the stumbles of humankind, and each fall spoke a burden that no prayer could lift except the prayer offered in surrender. Along that path, mercy and justice seemed poised in a paradox too profound for words, until at the hill's crest the crimson sky widened to embrace a sacrifice that would become a bridge between heaven and earth. Nails, cold and unyielding, met flesh that had only known the balm of healing. A crown of thorns pressed into a brow that wore compassion like a diadem. In that awful tableau, I beheld a collision of sin and grace, of death and the promise of life beyond every grave. As the sky grew dark and the earth trembled, I felt the veil between worlds tear open. The cry that broke from his lips was not merely the agony of flesh, but the triumph of love poured out to its uttermost. In that moment, time itself bowed. Creation paused to witness the price paid for every breath of hope. When the final breath slipped free and the curtain of the sanctuary rent in two, I understood that no fortress of despair could stand against the rising tide of resurrection power. 3 days of silence followed, days in which grief and fear roamed like restless ghosts. Yet beneath the surface, hope stirred. On the dawn of the 3rd, Mary found the tomb empty. Stone rolled away as though by an unseen hand of mercy. In that garden of astonishment, she heard the voice that first called us out of darkness, now calling each heart to new life. Do not hold me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go, tell my brothers that I am ascending. In those words lay the promise that death would not have the final say. And when he appeared to us behind locked doors, peace fell like gentle rain upon frightened souls. His wounds, once marks of shame, became badges of triumph, reminding us that the scars of atonement speak of healing for all who would believe. He breathed on us the spirit of empowerment, sending us into the world as witnesses to the life that conquers every shadow. In his resurrection, we discover the heartbeat of a kingdom that will never fade, a story that moves from cross to empty tomb and onward into every soul willing to embrace the light. Now, as our feet stand upon the threshold of mission, we carry the echoes of every moment. The whisper of Gethsemane's prayer, the shout of Calvary's cry, and the silence shattered by the dawn of new creation. Our task is to walk that path of love through streets where sorrow still lingers, to speak words of hope to those trapped in fear, and to pour out mercy where wounds remain unhealed. For the story does not end at the empty tomb. It blossoms into the lives we touch, the prayers we lift, and the grace we share. So let us step forth, instruments of an everlasting hymn, our voices joined to the chorus of heaven and earth. With every heartbeat, may we echo the refrain of resurrection joy, drawing all who hunger into the feast of abundant life. Beyond this horizon lies the next episode of wonder, the unfolding of Spirit's power among trembling hearts, the proclamation to distant lands, the birth of communities knit by the blood and the Spirit. And as we press on, the eternal promise stands, that the one who walked the dusty road to Calvary now walks beside us, guiding every step into the adventure of grace without end. The early morning air still trembled with echoes of resurrection as we gathered behind closed doors, our hearts full of both fear and wonder. It was in that hush that the promise of another comfort was fulfilled. A rushing wind filled the room, and tongues of fire rested upon each of us, igniting a new language in our spirits. In that holy moment, we were unbound from silence, empowered to speak the mysteries of God in every tongue, as though creation itself leaned in to hear what heaven could not contain. I remember the rush of courage that swept through me when I stepped into the streets of Jerusalem, transformed from a man who faltered into one who proclaimed with unshakable boldness the name of the risen Christ. The marketplace, once bustling with commerce and chatter, became a stage for testimony. Strangers paused mid-stride to catch the cadence of my voice as I narrated the wonder of forgiveness purchased at Calvary. Some scoffed, others wept, and many believed, their lives unfolding like petals before the Sun of Truth. In those days, the church was but a fledgling band, Yet we witnessed signs that echoed the early harvest of the Spirit. The lame walked, the deaf heard, and the chains of oppression fell from countless souls. I recall the astonished faces when a paralytic leaped to his feet, his mat abandoned like a relic of past defeat. And I felt again the thrill of power that lays dormant until love breathes it awake. We shared everything in common, the wealth of many becoming the blessing of all, until no one among us lacked a need unmet. Persecution soon shadowed our joy. Stephen, radiant with heaven's light, knelt to pray for those who stoned him, his last breath a benediction rather than a curse. His witness became a spark that scattered the faithful to distant regions. I too know what it is to face the council's wrath, to stand before judges who brand truth as treason, and to rejoice when chains clatter against prison stones. Yet even within those cold walls, I felt the warmth of an invisible fellowship. An earthquake once shook my cell and flung open the doors, yet I stayed only long enough to encourage my brothers before pressing onward, for the gospel must never be contained. So I found myself on dusty roads beyond Judea, carrying the message to Samaritans who had long been estranged from a heart of promise. I recalled surprise in their eyes when living water flowed from my lips, quenching long-held divisions and uniting villages in praise. From Samaritan wells, I moved on to coastal towns where Gentile voices joined the chorus of salvation. I stood on the docks of Caesarea, preaching that the same Spirit poured out at Pentecost knows no barriers of birth or blood. In that declaration, the foundation was laid for a household of faith that would span every nation. In every city, I planted seeds of hope, gathering small assemblies around shared meals and shared prayers. In house churches, I watched as the flame of devotion passed from one generation to the next, mothers teaching daughters, fathers guiding sons, in patterns unbroken since the upper room. We worship with lifted hands and open hearts, breaking bread as though each crumb held memory of that final supper, binding us to the one who had loved us to the end. Journeys took me across the Aegean Sea, where storms threatened our fragile vessel. Yet I learned once more that the Lord's word is a lamp for our feet even amid the swell of waves. In Philippi, I met a woman of prayer whose spirit leapt at the sound of truth. Her home became a sanctuary for saints, a testament that even in foreign soil the gospel finds a welcome garden. In Thessalonica, hearts were set ablaze, and though persecution drove us out, the faith we had sown grew stronger in our absence. In Corinth's marketplaces, I engaged in debates that stretched from dawn to dusk, arguing that the cross is folly to the wise, yet the power of God to all who believe. There I wrote letters, epistles of encouragement and correction, woven with threads of theology and threads of pastoral care, that would one day guide churches I had never seen with eyes and shape communities I would never walk among in person. Yet every letter I penned was shaped by a heart that bleeds to the lost. I cataloged my longing in words that crossed the Aegean on ships' prows, longing to visit every flock, to fill every table with the bread of life. I spoke of love that never fails, of hope that anchors the soul, and of a faith that moves mountains yet rests in quiet trust. In each sentence, I strove to reflect the manifold wisdom of God, revealing how the tapestry of redemption weaves Jew and Gentile, slave and free, men and women into one body. In Ephesus, I lingered long, nurturing the new believers until the Spirit spoke through 12 humble men to cast out demons and to burn the books of magic that had held them captive. I watched as disciples gathered at the feet of the Magus princess's daughter, who had seen demons flee, and I marvel how the secret things of darkness were turned into testimonies of light. For 3 years I poured myself into that city, teaching in hall and home, planting churches that became oaks of righteousness even as false apostles trampled the ground around them. And so the road curved ever onward, taking me to distant shores where no synagogue had stood, where idol temples loomed like giants. In Athens, amid marble courts, I reasoned with philosophers, quoting poets to proclaim that the unknown God they worshipped in ignorance had now been revealed in Christ. Some sneered, others paused at their own quest for meaning, and a handful joined in worship at the base of the Mars Hill. Even there, amid the ruins of human wisdom, the message of resurrection found its rock. Now, as I reflect from the vantage of a prison cell once more, I sense the threads of this narrative drawing taut toward a new chapter. Chains may clank and walls may surround me, but I feel the echo of a greater freedom calling me ahead. The promise of a body transformed, a city eternal, and a reunion at the wedding feast of the Lamb. Letters yet unsent linger in my pouch, each one a seed destined to sprout when hands unseen scatter the words in eager hearts. Beyond these walls lie fresh fields of the harvest, valleys waiting for voices, and harbors poised for ships of mercy. The Spirit who began this work within me stirs again, bidding me onward. So let us press forward together, toes at the brink of tomorrow's dawn, hearts attuned to call that first whispered follow on Galilee's shore. And as we step into that unfolding horizon, may every footfall echo with the promise that the one who walked the dusty roads of history now leads us to eternity's gates, where every tear is wiped away and every story finds its joyful consummation. With hope kindled in my breast, I gaze beyond these bar windows toward a road that beckons, the pilgrim's way stretched out beneath the sapphire heavens. I recall how once upon a time I stood on the shores of Galilee, the dawn mist dancing over the water as the teacher's words rose on the breeze. Follow me. In that sacred summons, I discovered the rhythm of true freedom, the freedom to leave behind the nets of my own making and pursue a higher calling that would outlast the turning of every tide. Memory carries me to that morning light, when the air was sweet with the song of larks, and Simon Peter, his feet still wet from the sea, leaped ashore with a heart ablaze. In his laughter, I heard the echo of a joy that knows no bounds, a joy born of knowing that we're called not to build kingdoms of sand, but to anchor our souls in the eternal rock. From that moment, every step was marked by wonder. Wonder the lilies that neither toil nor spin, yet are arrayed in splendor beyond Solomon. Wonder the Father's tenderness toward the smallest sparrow. Wonder that he numbers the hairs upon our heads, and yet longs to delight in us as children delight in song. In my travels, I have walked the pilgrim's mile through towns of white stone and dust. I have paused at wells where water tasted promise. I have knelt in synagogues where the ancient scroll whispered through the incense-laden air. There I discovered that faith is not a quiet ember to be guarded in solitude, but a flame to be shared in fellowship, warming every heart into communion. It was in one such gathering, beneath a canopy of stars, that I heard a widow pour out her lament in trembling prayer, and watched in awe as her tears became the baptismal waters of new faith, covering her like a garment of light. Yet the path of faith is not without its shadows. I have known the sting of betrayal, the ache of rejection, and the gnawing doubt that creeps like a silent thief in the dead of night. In those hours I turn again to the Psalms, finding the cry, "Why, O Lord, do you stand far off?" Not a plain complaint, but the first stirrings of a deeper trust. For even when heaven seems silent, its vault is undergirded by purpose, weaving every unspoken prayer into a tapestry of grace beyond our sight. So it was that I learned to pray not for deliverance from every trial, but for strength to bear and grace to grow. I discovered that tears are not wasted when offered in honest confession, for they water the seed of compassion within our souls and shape us into healers of the broken. I remember kneeling in the hush of midnight, my own spirit weary from the day's battles, and feeling the gentle breath of the advocate stirring within, a whisper that carried me from despair to hope, from the frailty of my will to the steadfastness of his. In the bustling markets of Asia, I witnessed faith's bloom amid adversity. I saw merchants hush their bargaining to hear the cross. I saw magistrates, stern of face, softened by the testimony of transformed lives. I saw the worn and wounded gather around tables where bread and wine spoke of presence that transcends every hurt. In that sacred bread, I tasted the body broken for many. In that cup, I tasted the blood poured out for forgiveness of sins. And I understood that remembrance is not mere nostalgia, but a living act that invites heaven's reality into our midst. From the wharf of Ephesus to narrow lanes of Philippi, I carried letters sealed with my own blood-inked tears, words of encouragement to the weary, of correction to the wayward, of hope to the persecuted. To the Corinthians I wrote of love that never fails, insisting that without it all eloquence is but a clanging cymbal. To the Romans I penned the majesty of justification by faith, declaring that we stand righteous before God not by our deeds, but by the atoning sacrifice of Christ. And to each community I entrusted a portion of my heart, longing that the Spirit's power would bring every promise to full bloom. Yet amid those miles and letters, there emerged a deeper yearning, to behold the face of beloved and to worship beyond the veil of words. I sensed in my spirit an ache for the consummation of all things, when heaven and earth shall sing in unison, and the Lamb shall be the light that dispels every shadow. I glimpsed that day in visions of the Revelation, as the 4 living creatures and the 24 elders fell before the throne, casting crowns of gold and crying, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain." In those scenes I found the assurance that the story we live is but a chapter in an eternal epic, one that begins in creation's dawn and marches toward a Lamb's triumphant reign. And now, as I prepare to close this fragment of our shared pilgrimage, I feel the pulse of heaven quicken within me. The world may tremble with wars and rumors of wars, but I have heard a voice that bids me be still amid the tumult. The earth may quake and kingdoms tumble, but I have beheld a city whose foundations rest on rock rather than sand. The heart may falter under the strain of sorrow, but I have embraced a hope that anchors my soul and will not let me go. In the chapters to come, we will press into the mysteries of suffering embraced in love, the paradox of strength perfected in weakness, and the glory that awaits us beyond the final veil. We will explore the heart of the Good Shepherd and trace the footprints of the one who goes before us, preparing places that no eye has seen. We will hear the echoes of his voice calling us to march onward, ever onward, toward the city whose gates are never closed. So let us rise together, kindred spirits on a march of faith, and watch as each step unfold a panorama of grace. Let us listen for the still, small voice that guides our wandering feet. Let us open our hearts to the outpouring of the Spirit, that we might bear fruit in every season. And let us ready ourselves for the final adoration, when every tongue will confess and every knee will bow before the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, our Savior and our friend, whose story is our own and whose glory is our destiny. And now, with our journey's tapestry nearly complete, I stand on the threshold of eternity's gate, my heart aflame with the promise that carried us from the first breath of praise to the final echo of glory. I recall once more the psalm that bids us dwell in the house of the Lord all our days, to gaze upon his beauty and inquire in his temple. In every step of this pilgrimage, that sacred dwelling has been our guide, a whisper in the wilderness, a lantern in the night, a refuge when storms surge around the fragile vessel of our faith. We have walked beside the shepherd whose rod and staff bring comfort, whose table is spread with abundance amid enemies' taunts, whose cup overflows with goodness and mercy. We have waded through waters of baptism, felt the Spirit's wind in our sails, and tasted the living bread that satisfies every hunger. We have borne the cross of self and sin, only to discover its paradox, that death through sacrifice births life more radiant than any sunrise. We have pressed through the valley of the shadow, not fearing evil, for his rod has guided us and his voice has returned our trembling spirits to rest. And now at journey's end we glimpse the shore beyond time, where sorrow and sighing flee before the Lamb who was slain. The city of our God shines with a brilliance not of earth's making, its gates of pearl, its streets of gold, its river of life flowing from the throne. In that place no tear will stain the cheek, no shadow cloud the heart, for the morning star will shine with healing in its wings. Every longing we have known finds its consummation there, the cry for justice answered in mercy's reign, the groan of creation transformed into song of redemption, the ache of separation swallowed by reunion at the marriage feast of the bridegroom and his bride. Here, too, our story finds its final note, a story that began when dust felt the breath of the Creator and will conclude when heaven and earth unite under his feet. We who have been poor in spirit are now heirs of an inheritance that cannot fade, guardians of a hope imperishable, stewards of a light that the darkness cannot overcome. Of these truths we bear witness with every soul awakened, every life restored, every act of love that echoes heaven's heartbeat. Let us therefore enter the gates with thanksgiving, the courts with praise, declaring that the Lord is good, his faithful love endures forever. Let us cast every burden at his feet and lay down every shield. For in his presence we find rest that neither toil nor sorrow can steal. Let us put on the garment of praise instead of the spirit of despair, that the world may see our joy and know the source from which it springs. And as the Lamb walks among the lampstands, we will stand before him with harps in hand, our robes washed white in the fountain of atonement, singing the song of the redeemed. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain, to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise. For he alone reigns forever, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, the one who was, who is, and who is to come. So here we pause, not as an ending, but as a glorious commencement of all that lies beyond the veil. Our feet have trod the pilgrim's way. Our eyes have seen the promise fulfilled. Our hearts have known the love that will never let us go. May every word of this testament breathe life into weary souls. May every echo of prayer awaken dormant hope. May every cadence of praise draw us nearer to the throne. And in that day when time gives way to timelessness, when the King returns in splendor, we will join the throng of angels and saints, casting crowns at his feet, cry with a single voice, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." Thus shall our story, your story and mine, merge into the grand symphony of heaven, each note a testament to grace, each heart a vessel of unending worship, each life an eternal song rising before the one who is our origin, our journey, and our eternal home.